Lesson 6-6, Solve two-step inequalities. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to write and solve a two-step inequality, similar to how you wrote and solved two-step equations. What I want you to do first is I want you to complete the solve and discuss it problem with a partner. Compare answers, see if you can find more than one solution, and then come back and check your answers to see if you and your partner could come up with at least two solutions, and I'll provide you with some feedback. All right, take a look at these three possible solutions and see if you can come up with any others. Remember that there were some parameters here. You had $30 that you could spend, so you can't go over that, and you needed at least 1,000 craft sticks. Well, in order to get 1,000 craft sticks, you have to buy a minimum of 4 boxes, because remember, each box has 275 in a box, and 1,000 divided by 275 is just over 3.5 boxes, but stores aren't going to sell you a half a box. So you have to buy 4 boxes of the craft sticks, which is a total of $19. And then if you take a look at what that leaves you with, you had $30 to start. You've already spent $19 of it to get the craft sticks. That means you have $11 left. You have $11 left of your money to spend on the tape and the glue. So there are some different combinations that you can use in order to spend that $11, but you're never going to spend exactly 11. So when you look at this, you just have to keep in mind that your tape and your glue amounts cannot exceed $11. Are there any other solutions that you can think of that would work? Let's go ahead and advance to example 1 on the next page. Hamish has $25.97 in his pocket to spend at the craft store. He wants to buy a paint canvas and some paint pens. How many paint pens, P, can Hamish buy? So taking a look at the picture, what we see here is that the canvas is $14 and the paint pens cost $3.15 each. So what we have to consider is how much money is available and what is he planning to purchase. In this case, we know he's already going to buy a canvas and we know that he's going to buy some paint pens. So the cost of the canvas plus the cost of the paint pens cannot exceed, means has to be less than or equal to the money he has available. So the the inequality that we're going to solve is 14 plus $3.15 times P, which would be the cost of the paint pens, must be less than or equal to $25.97. So they went ahead and solved this over here on the right side by doing the 2 steps, and of course they use horizontal work. I'm going to go ahead and do it right here and do it vertically. Same thing. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to take out the cost of the canvas from the amount of money that's available to see how much money he has to spend on the paint pens. Now remember, when you are subtracting, you do not change that inequality sign, so it stays less than or equal. Then in order to find out the number of possible paint pens that he can purchase, we need to take the amount of money now that's available after we have paid for the canvas, and we need to divide that by the amount for each paint pen, which is $3.15. And in this case, P is less than or equal to 3 8/10. Now there's a problem with this. When you go to buy a paint pen, you can only buy a whole number of paint pens. Fractions and decimals are not going to be a part of that. You can't buy half of a paint pen. Okay? You can't even buy 8/10 of a paint pen. So when I look at the solutions that are a part of this graph, okay, so I notice that there's a solid dot here at about 3 8/10, and the graph goes to the left. What I need to realize is that I can only buy the whole numbers of paint pens. So if he's going to buy paint pens, he can either buy 1, 2, or 3. Okay? All right, now I'd like for you to take a look at the try it, see if you can set up that inequality, and then solve it. Come back when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, let's go ahead and consider the try it question. Erin had $52 to spend at the florist, and she wants to buy a vase for $11.75 and several roses for $3.50 each. What are the possible numbers of roses Erin can buy? So when you set up this equation or this inequality, you need to consider that the vase has a set price of $11.75, but you need to add to that the cost of the roses, which are $3.50 each. You use a less than or equal to symbol in the circle because you can't spend more than $52. Then you'll take a look over here on the right side and notice the work that I did to solve that inequality. First, remove from your total amount available the $11.75 that the vase costs. So what you have left to spend on roses is the $40.25. Now when you divide both sides by $3.50, which is the cost of one rose, you'll find that $40.25 divided by $3.50 is 11 5/10. Now, last time I checked, you can't buy any fractional parts of flowers. So R has to be less than or equal to 11 5/10. Since roses are only coming in whole number values, that means that Erin can buy 11 or fewer roses. Okay. If she buys 12 roses, then she spent too much money. Now let's take a look at example 2. Members of the Science Club are selling coupon booklets for $17.95 as a fundraiser. They hope to exceed the amount of money they raised last year. Exceed the amount of money they raised last year. So I'm sure that the sign over here tells us what they raised last year. Okay? How many more coupon booklets, B, must the club members sell to achieve their goal? So the inequality that represents this situation has to tell us what they've currently raised, $498.75, plus we're going to add to that the cost of a booklet times the number of booklets we need to sell. So that's this piece right here. And then that amount has to be greater than, because we want to exceed last year's total, which was $658.35. So here's the inequality that we're going to be solving. Again, doing the work that they do, they've taken away the $498.75 from each side, and then they divided by the cost of one booklet to find out that B, the booklets, has to be greater than 8 89/100. Well, you can't buy part of a booklet, so that's where we see the answer solution has to be at least 9 booklets in order for them to exceed last year's fundraising total. Now I want you to complete the try it question. The try it question is similar. You have to set up and solve the inequality. Come back when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, let's take a look at the try it that goes with this. So here we're looking for how many calendars does the jazz band need to sell to raise at least $600 for a competition. When we set up the inequality, we know that calendars are $8 each. So that's this piece right here. And we know that they already have $350, right? So that's so far. That's $350 so far. Okay, so this is the amount of calendars they need to sell. And what we want is that that is going to be greater than or equal to the $600 that they need. So that's the at least 600 part. Now we're going to take away from the 600 the amount that they've already raised. And what we find is that now that we have taken that out, it tells us that the calendar sales have to be greater than or equal to $250. Well, when I divide that amount by 8, which is the cost of each calendar, then I get a decimal number, $31 or 31 25/100. The problem is that you can't sell a calendar unless all the months are there. So we can't sell 31 25/100 of a calendar, but we can sell 32 or more. If I sell 32 calendars, then I will have sold more than what I need to exceed my $600. Now take a look at example 3. In example 3, we are going to be looking at solving inequalities, again, 2 steps, that have negative values. So we can't forget what we learned in the previous lesson about what happens if we have to multiply or divide by a negative value. So I want you to remember from the previous lesson, when you multiply or divide by a negative value, you have to reverse that inequality symbol. So if it's a less than symbol, it changes to greater than, and if it's greater than, it changes to less than. So now let's take a look at the example itself. Of course, they do things in their format here where they're doing it horizontal, and I'm going to do it vertically. So negative 10 minus 9 halves times x is less than 80. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to add the 10 to both sides, because this piece right here, I need to undo that process. And how I get rid of a negative is I put the positive with it. So negative 9 halves x is less than 90. Now, in order to solve that inequality, I need to multiply both sides by that reciprocal value. So I'm going to take that fraction and I'm going to flip it around so that I am multiplying both sides by a negative 2/9. So now my fraction parts disappear and x has to be greater than, so I'm changing this inequality sign here. I'm flipping it from a less than symbol to a greater than symbol. And then I need to do the multiplication here. 90 times a negative 2 is a negative 180. And then divide that by the 9 that was in the denominator, and you get x is greater than a negative 20. Now I would like for you to complete the try it question. Pause the video while you do that and come back and check your answer. All right, go ahead and take a look at the solution to the try it question that went with example 3. And if you have questions about how I solve that, please come ask me before you get started on your work. If not, then you're ready to go on to the next page. All right, now we're going to try some of the work that goes with lesson 6-6. So on page 370, I want you to take a look at questions 5 and 7, okay? So these are two-step inequalities. You're going to solve these just like you would a two-step equation, only needing to make an adjustment if you have to multiply or divide by a negative number. Otherwise, the solution process is identical to how you solve a two-step equation. When you're ready to check your answers and your solutions, come back and check those for 5 and 7. Okay, let's take a look at the answers for numbers 5 and 7. Notice that each of these two-step inequalities, you're going to start off by doing a subtraction step first. In number 5, after you subtract the 4 from both sides, you then have to divide both sides by that 6 5/10. Since you're dividing by a positive number, you do not reverse the inequality. It stays the same. So your solution set is all the numbers x that are less than 5. So any number smaller than 5 would make that inequality true. Now take a look at number 7. In that inequality, you still have to do a subtraction. You're going to take away the 12 from both sides, and you end up with a negative 3/5 x is greater than 27. But in order to solve this one, because you have a negative fraction in front of the x, you're going to multiply by its reciprocal, which also reverses the inequality symbol because you're multiplying by a negative number. Okay, and don't forget, if you need a refresher on how to multiply 27 times negative 5/3, you're doing 27 times the negative 5 and then divide that by 3. Okay, So your solution set there is x is less than negative 45. In other words, any number smaller than negative 45 would make that inequality true. The next problems that I want you to do, these will be the last ones actually that we'll do, are numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11. So go ahead and try 8, 9, 10, and 11, and come back and check your answers when you're finished. After you're finished with those 4 questions, you should be ready to move on to your Math Excel. First, let's take a look at the answers to 8 and 9. In each of these 2 questions, you had to translate from the words into the numbers, the operations, and the inequality symbol. All right, now take a look at the solutions for number 10, parts A, B, and C. Notice that in parts A and B, x is less than 2 and x is greater than 2, which means they have no common solutions. All right, and for the last one, number 11, when you are writing the inequality, first remember that the budget is $94, so the total cannot exceed that, which means you're going to have a less than or equal to 94, like you see right over here in the inequality. Okay, that less than or equal to 94 indicates that that's within her budget. The $30 per day is when you add the 30, okay, in the inequality, because that's a steady fee each day. And the 20 cents per mile tells me that we're going to have to pay that 20 cents times the M, which is however many miles that Talia drives. So there's your inequality to solve. As you can see, you've got your steps here to solve it. And finally, over here on the right side, underneath the picture, M has to be less than or equal to 320 miles, which means she can drive up to 320 miles each day. See me if you have any questions. Otherwise, you're ready to get to work.